Well, hi there. It's me, Jeremy McRecording. I'm doing a video here on the Clank Thererec and the oh my God, it's hard to say. The Clank Thererec. Hey, it's editing, Jeremy. I did a little oopsie whoopsie. It's Thererec, not Therec or Theriac. Thererec, as in theremin and recorder. I think, hopefully I got that right. Can you see them? Look at these guys. Which one do you want to eat? So in order to not confuse you throughout the rest of the video, whenever I say Thererec accidentally or Theriac, I will be cutting in to say Thererec. Maybe just my head, like a little egg. Can I get into the camera so it's just a little egg? Here we go. I think I say it like 6 times. So I'm just going to record it now. And the Clank Proteo, 2 new modules from Clank. I'm a big fan of their Clank Chaos sequencer. We'll be using it today. And they do have this like concept of the Clank environment they are working towards. We don't have access yet, but it is coming. And we're just going to focus on what we have right here today. So what are these? Well, the Clank Thererec is a light-controlled modulation source that sends out CV and triggers. Hi again, it's editing, Jeremy. I sent this off to Clank, and they wanted me to specify to you that with the Thererec, it's not light-based, it's proximity-based. You can use these in the dark, in case you were worried about that. Turn off all your lights and just touch the little thing. It's fun, it's therapeutic, do it right now. And the Proteo is a very interesting oscillator that morphs between sine waves and any incoming signal, meaning that you can create waveforms on the fly. It also exposes in a very cool way the way that waveforms shape make certain sounds. So let's just check it out. I have this little sequence going from our friend, the Syntact right here, and that is making our Proteo make sounds. The Proteo is running into VCA right here, and we have some filter. It's all set at, nothing right now. I just want you to hear this. So it is a stereo oscillator. You are hearing the left and right channels. By default, the right one is panned. By default, the right one is panned to the right. By default, the right one is an octave lower. With the span control right here, you can tune them. There they are, right next to each other. I really shouldn't have done that, but I had to show you. Okay, so we need to get some information going into the top here. As you can see, we've got these 2 sliders. These go between the side wave on the bottom and whatever is passing in the top. I have our Thererec right here. Thererec. And the way this works is there are these little buttons down here, which I'll explain in just a second. But these right here are light-sensitive friends. There's a couple different modes these LEDs can be in. In blue, they are going to be in cycle mode, and we'll be able to create an LFO shape. In white, they're what's called in trigger mode, and you'll be able to send triggers in to reset the state of whatever you record. The things down here, these buttons, if I press one, it'll go orange, and this means it's ready to record. So let's go ahead and record something that's going to go into this oscillator. You're immediately going to see this start to move once I start adding stuff there. So it's really cool because, I don't need this right now, you can see that depending on what I put in here, we get different sort of harmonics. The more folded it is, the more harmonic it is, which is really, really neat. There's a speed control up here, so let's go ahead and record something. And once I press that, it will now cycle. So there's 2 speed controls at work here. Thererec has a speed control. Thererec right here. You can hear that it goes now slow, and this goes really fast. You can hear that we're creating different waveforms, and therefore we're creating different timbres for that oscillator, which I think is really cool. And then there's a speed control over here, this big dial right here. So this is going to sample it very slowly, and this is going to sample it very fast, I believe, to give it as a resolution or a sample rate control for what's coming in. So this will come into play when we don't have like a speed control over here, but you can already hear that there's a pretty big difference between different speeds. We also have an output control here. This is the level of the output. In this case, it's going to basically just create a louder waveform, but we can clip it and get almost like folded, what do we call it, like a folded square, which is pretty cool. Let's go ahead and do something to the second side, shall we? I love it. Okay, over here on our friend Proteo, I can freeze the waveform. So if you ever find like a little wavetable that you like, you can just freeze it. And this is where we really get a sense of what different shapes do to different waveforms. It's really, really cool. And we can morph between those. So you can do this by hand, which is a really great way to create complex timbres on the fly. So you can use this to kind of like build up your track. Because complex timbres are going to lead to more aggressive, sort of exciting bits. But we can also do some interesting stuff that almost borders on like additive synthesis or FM synthesis, in which I can send envelopes to that and we can get an interesting experience there. So let's try that real quick. I am using the Univer Inter here. It is a USB to CV thing. One of the things you can do on the Electron boxes is set up an LFO to basically happen once every single time there's a trigger. So every time there's a trigger here, I'm sending out a saw wave, which you can see is right there. You can see saw wave. So what we're going to do is take that output here. I'm going to molt it. So this is the input for those right there. Okay, so if I turn the depth all the way down, go ahead and turn off the other stuff right now. Here we go. So watch this and listen. See how we're now going from the more complex wave shape down to that sine wave. There's an exponential down. There's a sine wave. So this is really cool because what this means is you can go from a complex shape to a less complex shape in the way that you would in like FM or even certain forms of wavetable synthesis, which I think is really cool. And I can change this again by increasing like the speed here and speed here. I can make those upper harmonics a lot more aggressive and glassy, which is cool. Let's go ahead and add some effects. I think we've got a sense of what's going on here so far. So what I'm going to do is go into my Syntact, and I'm going to go to here. Now, what I really like to do, what I'm going to do for this track specifically, is make this into a lead. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this track. So clear, great. Now I can play it. So what I'm going to do is turn this way up like this. And I'm going to go to that LFO and change it to be really long. Like that. And now I have sort of a timbre control here that increases and decreases the envelope going to that bit. And it's, I don't know, I think it's pretty cool. So let's jam a little bit, all right? Okay, so in this demo, what we're going to do is instead of using the Thererec, I'm going to use the Clank Chaos because this is actually really, really fun. Let's go ahead and grab, let's see, is it this output right here? Yeah, these two outputs. So the Clank Chaos is an aleatoric sequencer, meaning random. Each channel could have a different time division. It could have a different voltage ceiling, or pitch at the top, or voltage at the top. They have a different voltage floor. It can be quantized. It can be unquantized. It can be slewed. It can listen to a clock. It can not listen. It's just so many things. I really like it. It makes a wonderful brain for a system. And what we're going to do now is use it to generate waveforms and modulation for the Proteo. And so let's experiment with that a little bit. Make sure that this is all good here. So there's our sequence with a little bit of effects on it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn these all the way up. So you can see here, turn this down a bit. Because this is a sequence coming out over here, we're getting these like square waves. And the cool thing that you're hearing right now is like basically like pulse width modulation. We are getting some like weird kind of like, I don't know, rectified and mirrored squares. But down here, it's kind of pulse width modulation because the rate at which these squares appear within the window, which is dictated by this right now, dictates the pulse width. So it's a really cool way to understand how waveforms shape the sounds. Now, we can do a couple things here. We can change the timing of this. I can go really fast. I can go slow. And the other thing I can do is I can loop both of these. So what I'm going to do is loop these to like 2. And I'm going to turn on a loop. There we go. So what I've just done is I've looped the sequence coming out of Chaos, which essentially creates a waveform. Does that make sense? Like there's a sequences of voltages coming out of Chaos, and that now represents the waveform. So if I go really fast over here, we'll get one implementation of that waveform. A little bit slower over here, we'll get that. And then of course I can freeze either one, whatever I want. And you can morph between them. Now the other cool thing we can do with this is slew these outputs. So I'm going to turn slew on. And now if I unfreeze these, you can see that we're getting these like slewed outputs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the voltage ceiling down so that we don't clip like this. And now we're going to get more like sawtooth pulse width modulation, which I think is pretty cool. So before we were like hitting the ceiling, now we're slewing between those things. We're not getting full-on sine waves. If we had, well, actually, I mean, I could use this right here to do that. I'm not going to right now, but we can get sine waves out. So does this make sense? We're using a sequencer to generate voltages at a certain rate, and those are turning into waveforms within here. I'm going to go ahead and increase the speed of these time. And eventually, we can get almost noise. And doesn't that sound familiar? Doesn't that sound like sample rate reduction? Well, that's because it is. We have created a reduced sample rate waveform. And yes, this thing will accept audio rate stuff. And yes, this speed or the timing control can be modulated as well. Okay, so now that you've heard what this sounds like, I think it's time that we find a nice waveform for ourselves and jam on this a bit. So by being able to switch between sine waves and these incoming waveforms, we get a very cool timbre shift opportunities, and then distorting it through our Carrier over here. Even more timbre. More timbre! So real quick, let's go ahead and take the output of this LFO here. So I will take the Syntact LFO and we'll go ahead and put it into our inputs here, like this. When there's no input going into Proteo's samplers, the little things that look for waveforms, it's not going to do anything. It's not going to have any waveform here to know what to do with. But what we're going to do real quick is use... I put these in the wrong place. So what you're hearing right now is an LFO in that same trigger mode we talked about earlier, that saw wave down almost like an envelope, coming out of the Syntact. This is a MIDI signal going into this as a waveform generator. And as you can see down here, we're getting little baby saw waves, which is fantastic. Now, if I take this off trigger mode, make it free mode, and go to a sine wave, we're now listening to what is sort of like a folded sine wave. And I can find a way to probably get this to almost be a sine wave. Now that is fucking cool. So I'm using an LFO, a sine wave LFO, to generate a shape that's getting converted to CV and put in here. And I can adjust things like the volume, and I probably could find a way to freeze that right in such a place, somewhere around right there. And now I've kind of created a weird sine wave. I think if I adjusted the speed, I'd move it around a little bit. So let's see what happens. Yeah, there we go. I can actually move this. Stop right there. Stop right there. So I personally think this is badass because it really exposes again, like how waveforms and their edges affect how things sound. As we pass edges through the window here on the left and the right of each one of these windows, we get a sharp edge, which then expresses itself as like a saw wave. As we increase the number of folds in the thing here, we get more glassy. As I go down to like only one, we get, or theoretically could get, what amounts to just a sine wave. So I think this is cool. Let's go to like a random wave here. So this is kind of like what the Clank Chaos was doing. I could freeze that there, and then I could use any signal I want to go between those. Now that I've sampled it, I could take this out, or you know what I can do? I'll just go back to saw wave. I'll go to 1, and I will take this instead and put it over here. Now there is a control on this. There's an input to turn the freeze on and off. So you can have this freeze here. Oh, I'll do it right now. Here. I think it is here. I could be wrong. We'll find out. Nope. It was this one. You have to have freeze off. So now what's going to happen is it's going to sample that incoming waveform based on this clock. All right, cool. So maybe we'll just leave it like that. I don't need this. Now, our friend, the Thererec here, also has one more mode that I should show you since this is a sponsored video. I'm gonna make sure I show you everything. Okay, so I'm now generating a waveform here again. So if I take a trigger here, I believe it's that one. I'll change it if it's wrong. Let's record something first. So I'm gonna press this to make it orange. Okay, there it goes. So now, this is resetting that wave, which is another way that you can create shaped timed waves. Right now, that's going at a quarter note. If I go to faster, you'll see this gets really small. I can find like a little happy medium there because I'm resetting it so fast, right? So there's a lot of interesting sweet spots here to create on-the-fly timbres. And it's a really fun sort of experimentation station when it comes to exploring how waveforms are shaped. If I want to delete that, I can just go like that. I'm going to go back to cycle mode, record something. I can freeze these one at a time. Something like that. Cool. So that is Proteo and Thererec. Hopefully I'm saying those right. From Clank, the people that bring you the chaos and, at some point, the Clank axis as well. Pretty simple little demo. I hope you like this. Thank you to Clank for sponsoring this video. It's always a joy using your stuff. I'm just going to jam a little bit and see you out. Thanks for watching. My name is Jeremy. This is Red Means Recording, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thererec. 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 That's probably enough.